Okay. How's that? Okay?
Yeah.
Not so good with microphones.
So, right here.
All right. Better?
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I've not done a reading in a long time, so I'm pretty nervous, so bear with me. I've been to a couple of your readings here, and they were really lovely. You seem like a warm and lovely crowd. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the Lane Literary Guild as well. Okay. Sure.
You need to step closer.
Okay.
Yeah, right there.
I told you it's been a while.
That's better.
Better?
Yeah.
There. Okay, I hear it too. Okay. This is called Hydrangeas on Moving Day. Desert-born, I was floored by their bounty, to find them thriving, untended in the backyard. An ideal so novel, I pictured them only in fairy tale, in gardens, immaculate, English, terraced, in places imagined but never occupied. How lovely that they flourish in mundanity, leaning into the neighbor's yard, over the mossy, slipshod fence. I've come to count on them, to call up their propagation against the Northwest's endless rains, envision how they'll breach the tired forest hues, invigorate the gray-green, changeless pine, run through even all wet winter with their full-blown saturation. Now I gather and cull, last blue bloom, last vestige of summer snipped, color already leaching from the orb of clustered petals. It bides a final time in the jam jar, a mere half-mile move, but only lilacs there, too faint to carry through the months of cloistered gray. I'll hope their scent hangs on a stutter of spring-swept air, to survive on what lingers, on what in the mind multiplies, to be suffused.
You might move that a little closer to you.
This?
It slides on the floor.
Okay, all right. Okay, better? Could you not hear that at all? Sorry.
Very soft.
Sorry, I have that problem. Better? Okay. Okay, this one I wasn't initially going to read, but when I sent some poems to Joan, she pointed this one out as the one that she said struck a chord with her, so I thought I'd read that. First day of third grade. Against the ochre-stunned horizon, the chill steams off the roof. By now you're settled in your desk, aligning to routine, summer limbs soon to pale under fluorescent gleam. At last night's back-to-school event, you found your friends, slid quick within their fold. I watched your filling, lengthening frames, a pack of kings return to rule on brief, forgotten ground. Another parent, his daughter's first year, frets about strict structure, regrets he didn't choose a Montessori where kids are free to move through study, subject, the classroom. I nod, but I admire the orchestrated days, the line of tiny bodies soon to file hushed through halls. How the shrill screams know to soften, the frenzied muscles calm. The schedule clearly laid in chalk, each moment counted. Homeschooled, raised without confine, for years I struggled to create and learn to live within routine, to form from chaos the day's shape. How good it is to have somewhere to be beholden to someone, something. Endless summer, its own kind of bleak. All that time spent kicking dirt, staring at a space that never fills, loses luster, empties to a blank, unbroken string of aimless days. Indecision, bare freedom can be an infirmity. This morning, last night's wild play slept off. You eased right into habit, chipper, so exactly sure of how and where to be. We watched the bus lights glowing through the fog, slowly lighting toward our street. Obligation, such a sweet relief. This one I wrote after the last big ice storm we had a few years ago. It's always so striking to me how everything the world kind of changes, especially here because it's so rare, Anyway, bow. Over the neighbor's house, the huge pine arcs, its top bent in a Seussian curve. Still live, it retains the shape of last winter's ice storm. Slowly it waves in wind, feathers its tip upward, but always the fronds return, splay toward earth, pointing back toward Genesis. It won't forget. So I too recall how everything stilled to glass, turned ethereal. Out front, the weeping elm dripped crystal, its long thin branches tinking their own light, clear music as the sun dropped in soft glow behind the hill. Until later, in the bare dark, the song cracked, turned ominous, threat breaking the glassine, silent plain. The low boom of a blown transformer resounded like a bomb, its spark lighting through the curtain's cleft. And all night, the snap and crack of branches, the wait for thud, the sound of destruction near, then far, then nearer still, all of it amplified in the clear, carless road. A year and the elms rebuilt itself, twiggy branches shoot from split limbs, but the pine holds its curve, memory of that night ferned in cellulose, the way we know now trauma embeds in DNA, can even be transferred, abuse, anguish trapped in marrow. No wonder some patterns feel inevitable, up against not just learned behavior, the genetics of disease, mental illness, but also what's been felt. All of it twined in cells, family demons, even what collectively was suffered, lays in wait, rising from within until we bend to hold the form of what was born, memory manifest in our own bowing. Let's see. So this I wrote sort of in thinking about the concept of invisible work that's sort of in the consciousness now. And that probably you've heard, but having to do with kind of the mental and emotional labor that women still do, even though kind of the physical labor might be more equitable in our households. Kind of the planning and that whole mental load is still there. So this poem was actually not about that concept, but it got me thinking sort of about how even the physical work can still be invisible. So, offering during cold season. Don't touch me, you say, in effort to repel, to hold the germs at bay. I abide, though it's all for show, a talisman, a spell to ward infection away. I can't help but infiltrate, run the length of every sleeve and sock, collar and pleat, wend through weave, dishcloth, shirt, even the towel that blots each limb, inch of skin. All of it bides in a drawer by my hand, every morsel printed with invisible work. Even broth cold from bone to soothe and heal laced through. Bits of garlic float to the top, bearing my trace. Each clove rolled under my palm before skinned free. The bread born into shape by the heel of my hand. Each tine, sprig, crumb, cup, burdened by touch. Already I've smoothed the pillowcase that will bear your dreaming head, a laying on of hands, a blessing I can't redact.
That's wonderful.
Thanks. Okay, this is kind of another sad flower poem. I sort of went through a period of writing those for some reason, not on purpose, but impatience. All summer I waited for the flourish, and before all bare February I pictured the deck flush with bloom, the monotone relieved, dull pine and brown needle days run over with pigment. September, and finally they thrive, though spindly, overgrown on two long stems, as if they needed all balmy summer to loosen, to finally give. The heavy heads sway, crane toward the thin splintering of sun. Last call, last smear of waning light. Already it shifted, tapers low over the ferned hill, casts short, slow rays. What it is to feel the earth's tilt, the lean toward stunted days, to know the turn, the coming loss, and go all out. Rogue red, salmon and cotton candy pink, peach and stark cream, though threadbare, all but spent, ready to be plucked clean. Let's see. Okay, I'll read this one. It's a little one. I've had my mind on bees lately, or more recently, because the last few times I've been stung, I seem to have a worse and worse reaction. So nothing terrible, but they're just in my thoughts. To bees. You were always more than a nuisance, vibrating the clover, though of course it's only in your decline that we note your import. How you ferry new life, bud by bud. How integral your busy movement to even our lumbering survival, kernels of generation crumbed on your fuzzed limbs. It makes me sorry to have burst one of your kind beneath my bare foot. Even now I feel the sharp pinch, the way it spreads slow like honey, a runnel rising till I feel your power at my throat. Okay, this is a little bit of a longer one. Earth. A woman stands over a sink, a bubbling pot, a basket brimming with socks, a scraped knee. She stands day after unbraiding day, for years, for whole childhoods, whole centuries, tending the garden, the home, the litany of need, shoring up the details, the hurt feelings, the small selves, friable egos. I want the poem to end with her rising, socks unmatched and rolling to the tile, the washtub overrun, a trail of suds, of cries, of need falling from her hem, and then even the skirt stripped free as she steps, now running, become iteration removed from form, attached to nothing, no one, not even her skin, her name, her children's. This is how we loose her, isn't it? Imagine her unbound, shining, tropeless. But a cry is surfacing, a child calling her name, forging her shape with a red, hungry tongue. And what if she likes her form, the A-line skirt, its skim over knees? And there is something pleasing in a clean line, in everything set right. Joy in rendering a meal from grain, from greens, parcel of meat, the neat piles, sure slide of knife. And what of the small comfort that lilts from simmering pot, lifts on steamy air until it condenses into memory? Surely this has value, even as it binds. Always it is personal. So where does it leave her, us, me, middled, pressing for more, yet caught by a line that ravels into a past rife with caretaking, where our portion is still always partially prescribed, no matter each generation's molting? Yes, but also with the force of notes percolating, even in labor, mouths sounding. Okay, this is an older one for me. A late elegy for my father. I feel the lilt of springtime rising up on breezy air, feel fallen leaves begin to stutter at my feet. Another gust, my collar flutters open, letting warmth from April's limpid sun bud on my throat. 11 years, and still I think of you. The sharp, sweet waft of grass that's just been cut, and I inhale the softball field you walked from, never able to turn back, the patch of sprawling lawn where you remain interred. In every flower's startling growth I see you fall. I watch the valve inside your heart begin to fill, and in an instant instant split the petaled flesh apart. I wonder, did you feel it give, begin to fibrillate? I only heard the closet hanger's clang, came running down the hall to find Mom's body bending, trying to revive you. I've begun to lose a little more each year, the memory shading over, dark within the mind. I can't recall the way you raised your brow or hear the quiet rhythm of your voice beating in my ear. And yet I find I can't forget you, printed as you are on spring's uncurling wind. I wish that you could know my son, could see he has your dark-lashed eyes. I still miss you, but now when I intake the greening air and feel your absence blooming, I breathe in the cool relief I was afraid I'd felt. Okay. Let's see. I could read one or two more. What do you think? Two? Okay. Devotion.
You could go for 3.
3? Oh no, well that changes things. No, okay, that's fine. Devotion. Like clockwork, you call to me, your voice traveling up the stairs to break my resolve, just as I've settled in, pressed pen to paper, and begun. As if something in you can feel the moment I've withdrawn, managed to finally lift my mind from daily life, become separate, out of your reach. 10 years in, and still I'm not sure I've got it quite right. Am capable of chartering a child through the world, of sharing myself, of paying enough or the right kind of attention. I hope you won't trace your own self-worth to my turning away, feel abandoned, that instead, or at least also, you'll forgive, remember the times I pulled myself toward you. I'm not sure, given it's my mother's depression, all the times she couldn't bring herself to face me, even to manage a phone call or trip to the corner store that impressed most deeply on my psyche. I do recall rare excursions to the park, board games, tea parties with tiny china cups from her own childhood, but these memories, unfair as it must be, were not as felt. I hope you won't feel the way I shut you out as rejection, but rather as a turn toward my own mental health. Not as my mother buried under bed covers, or inert in deep escape in front of the TV, a book. No, instead, I hope, a practice, an act of devotion. This one. This is another older one, written not too long after we moved to Eugene, which is getting to be almost 10 years now. Hendricks Hill. The clouds have briefly cleared, and you have begged to come outside. As we climb the steep paved grade, I take in the strip of faint blue sky, the touch of sun lighting on the rain-wet street. The houses dot the wooded hills haphazardly, as if they were spattered here without thought, up and down, around the winding rises, the driveways dipping down and flattening into garages, slatted walkways. You are anxious to explore our new neighborhood, to reach the utmost top where the houses perch over the peak of the highest hill. So we hurry, your small legs straining. As we crest the small slope, my eye stretches and is stopped. The lines of pine trees blot my view. They mark their scraggly silhouettes against the sky so that I can look no farther out and must instead peer within the ferny cosp and note more houses burrowed like squirrels among more hills, their wooden decks perched over gaping drops. I wonder who would choose to live this way, deliberately shrouded from light and sky, unable to see beyond this nearly changeless green, never seeing the subtle patterning of light or weather, or the ball of sun slip slowly down and cast last pins of light across the sky before descending into night. Instead, there must be here only a dull, barely discernible dimming. I suppose there is a sanctity in this dark cocoon. in the way the trees bend their boughs to cover homes, dropping their needles to form a bedded cushion. Still, I long for the spanning bare horizon of the desert. I remember staring for hours out at nothing, and though the purpled mountains marked sharp lines against the distance, the sky opened around me and was endless. The eye, the mind remained unstopped. And though thought itself cannot be bound, surely it is shaped by what forms around it, must attach to what the eye perceives and learn to crave this. I wonder what it is to have sealed space for contemplation. I watch you gazing out at all the trees and wonder, because this is what you'll know, will you prefer the closeness of a stand of Douglas fir, find, like the birds, shelter in the brush? Will you feel naked among stretches of cloudless sky, yearn for a barrier between skin and sun, between the eye and all that stretches beyond? Yes, he prefers the shade, does not like the sun. Let's see. Sorry, I got mixed up here. So you want two more? Or one more?
One more.
One, okay. Okay, so I think I'll end on this one. Thinking about going into the new year, even though this poem seems a little bleak, I think it points towards hope. Yeah, okay. Midlife. A spate of steady rain and everything swells. The door too fat for the jam, the storm drain glutted with wet elm leaves. Mallards flock in pairs, drawn to the dip in the driveway, now full to the brim. You sit silent, each of us lit blue in the wake of a laptop's gleam. I listen to the drops' dull patter, even the lawn tipped past saturation, water pulling up in soft, sucking gurgles. Sharpness of feeling, of color, washed flat. There were days unladen, absent this monotony. Remember that livening? Laid out on the slant of a knoll in a rolling city park, gemmed emerald in the sun, the afternoon verdant, listen, wild. Colored by the blush of newness, novelty, later by memory, yes. Yet we've chosen each other again and again over the years that have begun to run together, canting drip by drip, toward a life we didn't quite mean. I remember, too, when our sun was taken with salt. Under microscope, each grain giving up its own perfectly sheared crystal. Something so simple, small, in an instant engulfs the whole eye in its lucence. Stand with me. I'm watching the ducks. They splash and preen, green heads bobbing, iridescent in the slip of light, buoyant in what's cast.